So this year's competition ratios were recently released, and it caused a bit of a flurry on social media, which led to a lot of you sending us, screenshots, links of where UK grads were unhappy or mad that IMGs were basically increasing the competition, getting into specialty training, etc., etc. So I thought it's really important that we understand why they're mad. What is there to be mad about? Is there anything to be mad about? And what is this competition ratio and how should we understand it? Hey guys, Breeze here. So I think the first and most important thing to understand is competition ratios and what they mean in the UK. Because for a lot of you, especially from if you're coming from a different country, you may not understand or accept it in the way that we use it here in the NHS, or how the recruitment works for training programs in the NHS. Mostly because usually for a lot of countries it's very much linear in the sense that you take this exam, if you do really well, you rank, and based on that ranking, you end up in certain specialty training programs, or maybe it'll be down to how well you did in certain parts of this or certain parts of that. And there are a lot of things that are taken into consideration, and there's typically like some form of an application fee or an exam fee that's associated, and usually people don't cross apply. Now, that's not the case in the NHS. When you are applying for a residency program, fellowship, specialty training, whatever you want to call it so that you can best understand it, if you want to get into some form of a training program, in the NHS, you can apply for as many as you really want to, so long as you meet the criteria to apply. And I'm 1,000% serious. Like, I know a lot of people who have done that. They will apply for multiple specialties, especially if some of them or a lot of them have the same general criteria or entrance exam. Since there is no fee to apply, there's nothing that's costing the individual to submit that application, and there isn't any sort of, oh, we also know that you applied for specialty X. Why did you apply for that if you actually want to be in specialty Y? A lot of people hedge their bets and will apply for multiple specialties. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they want to get into every specialty that they apply for. Why people do it, I guess it's up to them. Maybe they're thinking, I'll just get into whatever I feel like would be best for me after I see if I get into everything I want to get into. Maybe some people are like, I really want to get into, specialty X. Specialty Y is my fallback, but if I don't get into specialty X, I'm just going to concentrate on specialty Y. Or some people, just enjoy watching the world burn, and they're like, I'm just going to apply for everything and just see what happens. Maybe they really enjoy the interview process. Who knows? So that's the first thing that you need to understand about the competition ratio. It's not a really clear indicator of how many people actually are dedicated or wanting to apply for that program because of that. So when you look at a competition ratio and you see that there are, let's say, 100 seats and 200 people applied, that doesn't mean all 200 of those people actually wanted and were 100% committed to that specialty. It doesn't even mean that all of them met the criteria beyond the initial part. So they may not have even been long listed further to say, an interview or any other kind of exam or any other stage of the recruitment process. You're just seeing anyone's application who was submitted. And based on that submission, they're now saying that's the competition. That's how many people are applying for that specialty. So that's the first thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the specialty recruitment competition ratios, because it's not always, like I said, very clear. You might come back and say, well, Breeze, for those really, really specialized, ST3, ST4 levels, I'm seeing that there's more numbers, and why would somebody be applying for multiple posts then? It's true. And it may very well be that people are more specialized in applying at those levels, but that's the way it is with competitive specialties in general. If there aren't a lot of seats and a lot of people are applying, it will be competitive, but you won't see crazy numbers. You may see an uptick in those numbers generally, or just you might see more one year than another year, but I wouldn't say it's as bad as people are basically saying for some of the other specialties out there, that the numbers are getting to a point where they're not understanding what's happening here or there. So that's the first. Now, why are some of these UK grads mad about it? Why are people posting things and saying this is really unfair, IMGs are causing, a detriment to all of the UK grads, etc., etc.? So a significant number of these posts that we saw or that were shared with us stated that, well, you know what? It's because these IMGs are applying from abroad and they don't even have NHS experience, and they need to have some amount of NHS experience in order to apply into the, into this training program, and it's really unfair for us UK grads. The thing is, there's a lot of data about these competition ratios. I mean, you can even see, we'll link it below, HE has gone even further and said of the, applicants who've applied, how many of them are UK grads, how many of them are European grads, how many of them are other IMGs, and how many of them actually accepted those applications, those posts when they were given to them. So the thing to remember here is it doesn't state anywhere if the IMGs that have applied have NHS experience or if they're applying from abroad. And remember that IMGs who come and then join via the foundation program, which is something you can also do if you haven't done an acceptable pattern of internship outside, they would also be considered in this number. You're not suddenly considered a UK grad just because you've done foundation program here. So, we may not have a CREST form for the people in those situations. If someone's going to get really nitpicky and say, well, maybe we can determine on the basis of CREST forms, even though that data also does not exist. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. There is nowhere that it states that IMGs are coming in without NHS experience. Now, of course, that doesn't negate the possibility that individuals are applying directly and are joining into a training program. But from my point of view, if someone is able to do that, then obviously there's already systems and measures in place. That means that they have done it because they are allowed to do it. If they weren't allowed to do it and they were doing it, I think then we would have a bigger problem. I mean, yes, you can come back to me and say, Breeze, but UK grads should be preferred. This is the UK after all. Why are IMGs getting the same level of preference? Why should it be that way? Okay, I agree with you. But what have IMGs done to deserve that anger? We didn't put that legislation into place. And in fact, many of us before 2019 were subject to this resident labor market test, or RLMT, where we had to wait, where we had to actually see what were the seats that were left over after specialty training application was opened, and then we applied. Now, of course, at that time, there were IMGs who could bypass these stipulations. There were certain conditions within which you could still apply in the first round, as they called it, or the first iteration. But for the most part, international doctors who were coming into the NHS at that time had to wait for the second round for the specialty training post. So there's that. Now, you may come back to me and say, okay, but Breeze, there's some training applications where there isn't an interview, and these people are just taking this entrance exam, and they're doing really well on it, and maybe, yeah, they've got some stuff in their portfolio, but that's not fair. It should still go to a UK grad. Okay, fine. But let's also accept that there are individuals who are going through potentially an entrance exam, who are going through the long listing, short listing, and interview process, doing all the things that they need to have in their portfolio for this competitive specialty, and they are entering specialty training. They are getting a seat. So the question there becomes, is it unfair for the better doctor if that better doctor is an IMG? I think that's going to open a lot of doors and have conversations that we don't really need to be getting into right now. But at the end of the day, that's not on us. If you are able to do that, that's very commendable. If you're somebody, be it from abroad or from the, working from the UK itself, who's put together an application, you should be someone who is considered. And if you're going to say to me, well, that's not fair, Breeze, I can't do anything about it. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing as to whether or not it's fair. I'm saying this is the opportunity for you right now, and you shouldn't worry about what anyone else is telling you, or if anyone says it's unfair that you're taking away their jobs, because you're not. You've applied within a system that's allowed you to apply. You've done whatever you needed to do because that system has allowed you to do it, and you were found to be the more suitable candidate. And that's just the way the cookie crumbled. And people can be unhappy. People will always be unhappy. You can't fix it. You have to take care of yourself, and that's what's the most important thing I think I want people to take away from what I'm saying here. Because I think a lot of when I got these messages, I was just a little put off by how some people were saying, okay, I won't apply for training anymore, even though I have this, or I know I can do this. Maybe I won't even consider the UK anymore. How will people treat me? This isn't what you guys need to be worrying about, because you know what? When people say things in social media, a lot of it, most of the times with these posts I saw, you don't know who that person is. It's just somebody anonymous out there. And a lot of people in anger will say a lot of things. Doesn't necessarily mean that you should give up your entire dream just because somebody out there is unhappy. If that was the case, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't do because people are just generally unhappy with the way maybe I am or the way I look. And why should I not let myself have what I want to have and do what I want to do because someone might be potentially unhappy? The other interesting thing to remember, you guys, is that before they instated RLMT, before Brexit even happened, European passport holders, I was about to say graduates, but no, actually the condition at that point was if you held a European passport for certain European countries, it didn't matter where you graduated from, you could get full GMC registration, provisional registration on the basis of that passport, and you just had to take an English proficiency exam. They didn't require anything else. There weren't any exams for them, like we have to take PLAB or, do UCAMLA or any other postgraduate exam. They were getting registration. And you never heard anyone say anything about that. And that's fine, because now, if you're an EU/EA grad from certain countries, doesn't matter what your passport is, and we've got a video on this too, you don't need any exams. And that was really okay for people too. So you may come back and say, well, it's because there are more people applying now. It's unfair that there are more people applying now. Yeah, but that's competition. Did you guys get into medical school just waking up one morning and saying, you know what, I really want to be a doctor? No, there was competition. Because of that competition, you went, you studied, and you tried. And if you didn't get it the first time, if your country allowed you, you tried again, and you kept trying until you got in. That's kind of how competition works. The whole nature of our job, of our kind of progression, is competition. No one will ever hand anything to you. You just have to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you. And for you, the IMG who is sitting there, this is a great opportunity for you. Do what you can do and understand what is asked, required of you, and progress. Don't worry about what people are saying around you. The important thing, though, to remember is don't, in that process, let your fellow IMGs stumble. When we applied for internal medicine training, when we first came to the UK, we had pretty much zero information, guys. I mean, just beyond what was already there, and then it was not even well organized. It was just chaotic information all over the place. We didn't know anything. We couldn't figure out half the stuff that we needed to do, so that's why we put together Road to UK. We were like, you know what? We figured it out, and we want it to be easier for the next person to also figure out. That should be at the core of what you say and do, because you should always help out another person, IMG or not. But the reason I kind of am leaning a little bit more to IMGs right now when I say this is we're all coming into this, potentially leaving our friends and families behind, into a new country, atmosphere, environment. There's a lot that we don't understand, and the easiest way for us to adapt and move fluidly into that new system is by finding others who are supporting us because they've experienced it themselves. So always use your opportunities to help someone else, because you know what, you used to be there, and wouldn't you have liked it if somebody helped you out at that time? Anywho, I'm gonna leave all of this with a story. This is something that happened to me, and I think it's an important story to end this video with, because I think it'll give you guys something to think about. Probably a little bit along the lines of what I've already said, but just to kind of keep in the back of your mind. So as I said already, when I applied for internal medicine training, RLMT, or the Resident Labor Market Test, was still in place, which meant I had to wait until after the first round of applicants had already applied, and then I applied and had my interview. So basically when I went for my interview, the majority of the individuals who were there were international doctors for this very reason. But there was a British doctor there, and they were very unhappy to see us. I still clearly remember the look on their face when we all were gathered up after we had done like our ID check, and they had kind of made sure we were all present and accounted for. They had us sit in one room, and then they were going to start splitting us up for our interview. Before that, this person came over to us, and they said, do you know what? It's really unfair that you guys are here. You shouldn't even be applying. You shouldn't be here. So this was already someone who had actually applied in the first round. They weren't happy with where they got in, and they were hoping in the second round that they could get into that place, because apparently, I guess that place was still open, and they were threatened by us, the international doctors, applying. I was pretty put off, I'm not gonna lie. I, thinking back, wonder if that person said all of that hoping that we would be so shaken by their words that we would bomb the interview. I don't actually know what the intent or purpose of why they said all of that was, besides to put us down, really. And it didn't really matter what they said, because I went in there, did awesome, and I got an IMT number where I wanted to be. And that is really what I want you guys to understand. There's always going to be someone out there that you're not going to be able to make happy. There's always going to be a naysayer. There's always going to be someone who's going to tell you, you shouldn't do this. You can't do this. Why are you doing this? This isn't for you. Don't listen to them. If you're doing everything within the letter of the law, if you're doing everything the way you should be doing it, then who are they to tell you you can't do it? Who are they to say that no, it's not fair? You haven't done anything to make it unfair. This is the system. When all of this didn't exist, a couple of decades ago, if you talk to some of your IMG consultants who've been here for a good number of years and see what they had to struggle and get to, and they still became consultants, and I'll bet you there's probably going to be someone who says, you know what? They shouldn't have been allowed to do that. But they did. And they persevered. And so can you. So don't worry. Don't stress out. Who cares what other people are saying? You know what you want to do? You go and do it. The other things I want you guys to remember is, as I said before, Road to UK is always there to help you every step of the way. We have our specialties success mentorship, where individuals who've gotten into these competitive specialty programs will mentor you one-on-one. You can have a one-off session, you just talk about your portfolio, or if you want some of our packages where they actually go through everything, all of it, the whole process, you can look into that as well. And as always, guys, please continue to follow us on all of our social medias, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the whole good stuff, and be happy. And I'll see you around. Bye.